This weekend is the Derby d'Italia. Inter Milan will host Juventus tomorrow at 2:45 p.m. Eastern with coverage starting at 2 p.m. And you can catch it all on Paramount+. So to talk more about this match, let's bring in our guy, Marco Messina. Marco, the last time that these two teams met was back in September. It ended 4-3 in favor of Juve thanks to a late winner in the 91st minute. How much is the craziness of that game going to play into tomorrow's match?
It's funny because we don't come to expect this often with Italian football. And this also happened last year. This exact fixture ended 4-4. So it's been very open, very direct. I know Troy will like that because Troy needs goals to enjoy his
but you
football.
don't know, right?
I hope Troy is tuned in.
You don't like these games, right? With really good defending? No?
I like both. It's not one or the other. We have range.
He's the only person I know that has both sides of the argument, so you can win.
That's right. But this game means so much.
Yeah.
For me, it's actually my favorite game in Italian football because there's such a hatred and a heated rivalry between these two fan bases. It goes back to what happened with the Calciopoli scandal back in 2006. So it's not a friendly game at all. It means more. And there's so many good storylines for the top 4 position, for Champions League, but also for the Scudetto race, because the big knock on Inter, as fantastic as the Inter have been, and they've been unbelievable, playing some of the best football in Europe, only Bayern and Barca have outscored them, but they don't win in the bigger games, especially in Italy. It's 14 games, all competitions, that they don't beat Juventus, Napoli, or Milan. And to win a Scudetto, I think if you're an Inter fan, you want to see them beat one of these squads.
May I just say something? Just one little thing.
Please.
I don't think there is a broadcaster in America, let alone, I think in world football, that loves his football and his culture as much as Marco. He didn't even know the question that Claudia was going to ask. And he was buzzing in his chair ready to answer the question. He genuinely, I don't remotely love Argentine football as much as Marco loves Italian football. Every time.
I agree.
Every time we talk Italian football, bro, he knows the history about these teams and this derby from way before he was born.
And the best part about it is as well, he only used ChatGPT once.
No. Once. That one time when we were in the control room, right? I saw him prepping the game with ChatGPT. But other than that one time, it's been incredible, Marco.
I will echo that. You are so into your Italian football. We had Lloyd Kelly on yesterday, I believe. Yeah, yesterday. And
days are running together. Aren't they?
So I wasn't supposed to be working. Anyway, it's another conversation. We just in this situation there, though, Lloyd Kelly was talking about obviously the differences, but the one key thing that I thought was really important, Marco, was he spoke about how heavy the shirt was when he first got to Juventus. And we never got time to ask him more of a follow-up on that, but just how difficult is it for these players to play for Juventus, have that pressure of obviously expecting to be Champions League, expect to be challenging for the Scudetto, and just what does that feel like for any newcomer coming in?
First off, thank you, Nico. That's very kind. And Troy, I expect those backhanded compliments from you. But no, I totally agree with this. And I love the way that you went with Lloyd Kelly on this, because I think people don't realize Juventus is the most popular team within Italy. But that also means they're the most hated team in Italy, because every fan base will rally around not standing Juventus because they represent the power, they represent the North, they represent the history of Italian football. And Juventus fans, if you go back a little bit in time, they won 9 titles in a row. 9 Scudetti in a row, and at times they would still sack their coach because it wasn't good enough. So they would win titles, and because they didn't go far enough in Champions League, because they didn't win in dominating fashion, they would end up sacking their coach. Standards have fallen recently, where now it feels like the goalpost is to just get Champions League football, which is not enough for a club like Juventus. But I think there's a lot of players. You could be a really good player in a certain market, and we've seen this. There's countless examples of this. But when you go to Juventus, when you go to that club where every single day you forget what you did yesterday, it's sort of like Real Madrid, where they could end up booing you because you're not doing well on this day. And I think that has hurt a lot of the younger players at this club. And you could just look at the way that they've gotten rid of certain players. Dean Huijsen, for example, is a player that ended up going to Real Madrid just because those standards and expectations are extremely high. And Troy, I want to know, by the way, what was the question? What was the tie-breaking question you were going to ask Lloyd Kelly? I watched the interview and I was wondering.
We're not allowed to ask it on air. I did ask it. I got the question the answer to the question that I knew I was going to get. I will tell you when I see you over the weekend, my friend.
I think I know what it is.
I did get a tie-breaking question about Marco's use of ChatGPT. I posed literally the same exact question to AI that Troy just asked you, Marco, and it said, when you arrive at Juventus, you don't arrive at a club. You arrive with an expectation. And for Lloyd Kelly, this is the real exam. At Juve, defending is not about highlights. It's about trust. The pressure right now is simple. Finish in the Champions League places. That's not ambition in Turin. It's obligation. But don't take it from me. I'm not Marco Messina, Italian football expert.
Yeah, you guys are on one this morning. I love it.
Just talking to the game, Marco, again, Inter now are obviously the team everyone wants to try and beat. When you look at the league table, there's obviously, 13 points difference between the two clubs. How would this sit with Juventus? How would it feel to see that Inter are consistently keep being good, not only in Serie A, but also in the Champions League? That's where Juve are supposed to be, right? That's how the history, the fans should feel. So how does that translate itself into these types of matches?
It's the worst thing possible if you're Juventus fans, and that's why this game is the one that you need to step up in more than anyone. And it's also, I mentioned some of the deep-rooted rivalries. I went back to the past to 2006, but it's also the downfall of Juventus is one moment. Some people like to say Cristiano Ronaldo. I completely disagree. It's Beppe Marotta. It's the man that built this Juventus back up. When Juventus were finishing 7th place 2 times, they ended up going on this run of 9 Scudetti. He leaves the club after a disagreement. He goes to Inter, and all of a sudden Inter starts to create this cycle where they're going to Champions League finals, where they're winning Scudetti. He's still in charge. He became a stakeholder now of Inter, where he's running the club to perfection, and that's why you see Inter. They could change coaches. They have a coach that only was in charge for 12 games in Serie A before this job, and it's almost plug and play because they have a system, they have an identity, and I think you look how many Juventus directors have gone from the time that Marotta left. They consistently change. It's always a year zero. It's always a new project. It's always something new. And it feels like Juventus was that team that was always powerful. Juventus was that team that was always stable, that didn't sack their managers. There was a stat that Juventus hadn't sacked their managers, I think, since the 70s. And now we're coming to being used to it. And credit to Spalletti, who I think he has steadied the ship. There is hope that they can build upon this, but they're still missing something. I said it from the start of the season, and I said it even when Spalletti was getting some of the really good results that credit to him for getting, but they're a level below the teams that want to compete for the Scudetto, and that's not good enough if you're a Juventus fan.
Marco, you'd have to say Cristian Chivu's first season at Inter is going pretty well. 8 points clear at the top of the table. They're into the next round of Champions League. But how is his tenure viewed in Milan? Hasn't beaten the big teams, but still top of the table into the next round of Champions League.
He's blown past any expectation that anyone has had of Cristian Chivu. That was the one doubt anyone had. They said, yes, Inter is the best team, but they have a coach that's sort of unknown. And I said the same thing as well, that he was the risk. He has managed this to perfection. He created competition in a squad that needed to have some youth and competition. This is an Inter side that came off the 5-0 defeat to PSG. There were question marks. Even Federico Di Marco himself said he had to take weeks alone from his family, from his friends, to try to overcome what happened on that day, on that final. And he's just pushed the right buttons. He's gotten players like Zielinski, who were third choice under Simone Inzaghi. He's a starter in this team. And you watch Zielinski play and you say, how is this guy not a starter in the team? Then there's also the fact that he coached the Inter youth team, and he said, hold on, guys, why are we trying to go out there and spending money for a big center forward when we have Francesco Pio Esposito, who was part of our youth development? We don't need to spend anything to bring him back. And look how good Pio is. There's articles in Italy and newspapers saying, should Pio start over Marcus Thuram? That would have been impossible to think of last year. So there's a competition within the squad, players who come off the bench, also his communication, which I know it doesn't matter. He's going to be judged by our results, but he doesn't complain. He's just been perfect. He understands the DNA, and it's the most I've ever seen the youth be involved in this Inter project. And I think that is another thing that fans love to see. They love to see players who come from their youth system because there's a different attachment to the jersey. So I can't say enough great things about Chivu, but he needs to win a big game. I think that's the last hurdle that he needs to overcome.